This is HOA Storytime Central. They wanted control. I am standing in my driveway in Missoula, Montana, holding a violation notice I never received, and Sharon Collins is screaming at me that my truck is getting towed in 10 minutes if I do not pay $300 right now. She slams a small handheld stamp onto her clipboard like she is canceling a passport. The Harbor Point Community Association Fines and Enforcement Coordinator, red pixie cut, pink blazer, pink baseball cap, standing there like she owns the block. Behind her, a tow truck idles at the curb, the driver leaning against the door with his arms crossed, impatient. I work as a cable installer, so I deal with easements and property lines every day. I know what legal notice looks like. This is not it. Sharon waves a laminated policy sheet in my face. You parked a commercial vehicle overnight in violation of Section 12.4. If you want mercy, move somewhere without an HOA. My truck has my company logo on the door, sure, but I have been parking it here for 8 months with zero issues. I pull out my phone and open the HOA portal. I uploaded a waiver request back in March. It was approved. She does not even look at my screen. That waiver expired. You need to reapply every quarter. This is your third violation this year, so the fine tripled. I scroll through my portal. There is no record of any violation before today. I tell her to show me the first 2 notices. Sharon smiles, cold and sharp. We are not required to keep duplicates for residents who ignore deadlines, but I have the log right here in my file cart. She gestures to a rolling file cart next to her car, stuffed with folders and binders. She does not move to get anything. The tow driver checks his watch. Lady, I got 3 more calls today. Are we hooking this or not? Sharon turns to him. We can tow first and explain later. That is how enforcement works. That line hits me wrong. I have heard that phrase before, maybe a year ago, in a neighborhood group chat argument about someone else getting towed. The details are fuzzy, but I remember people saying the violation was never proven and the homeowner had to fight for weeks to get reimbursed. I look at Sharon again. She is standing there with the same stamp, the same laminated sheet, the same file cart. This feels rehearsed. I tell the tow driver to hold on. I am calling the management company right now. Sharon steps closer. You can call whoever you want, but the tow order is already logged. Once it is in the system, it cannot be canceled without board approval. I dial the management company. It rings 4 times, then voicemail. I leave a message with my address and the situation, then I turn back to Sharon. She is already walking toward the tow driver, clipboard in hand, like I am not even there anymore. I raise my voice. If you tow my truck without a valid notice period, I am filing a complaint with the State Attorney General and copying your insurance carrier. The tow driver pauses. He looks at Sharon. You got the paperwork on this? She waves her clipboard. It is all logged. You are authorized. He shrugs and starts unspooling the hook. I feel my chest tighten. I lost my brother 2 months ago in a car accident, and I moved to Missouri to start over. I cannot take another layer of chaos right now. But I also cannot afford to roll over for someone who is clearly playing games. I step between the truck and the tow driver. I am not moving until I see a copy of the original notice with a postmark or a delivery signature. Sharon's face goes red. You are interfering with HOA enforcement. That is another violation. A neighbor across the street, an older couple, steps out onto their porch. They are holding coffee mugs, watching like this is a show. The man calls over. Everything okay, neighbor? I call back. Just trying to get proof of a violation I never received. Sharon spins toward them. This does not concern you. Go back inside." The woman on the porch does not move. She sips her coffee, slow and deliberate. She has lived here longer than Sharon has held any HOA role, and everyone knows it. Sharon turns back to me, voice dropping to something colder. "You have 5 minutes to move the truck yourself. Or it is getting hooked. Your choice." I ask her one more time for the original notice. "Show me the proof, and I will move it right now." She opens her mouth, then closes it. She looks at her clipboard, flips a page, then another. Finally, she says, "I do not carry field copies. You can request records through the portal." That is when I know she does not have it. If the notice existed, she would shove it in my face. Instead, she is stalling. I pull out my phone again and open the camera. I start recording. For the record, I am at my home in Harbor Point, Missoula, Montana. It is now 4:15 on a Thursday afternoon. The HOA fines coordinator, Sharon Collins, is threatening to tow my truck for a violation I was never notified about. I have requested proof 3 times, and she has refused to provide it. Sharon's eyes go wide. "You cannot record me without consent. That is illegal." Montana is a one-party consent state. I am a party to this conversation. I can record. The tow driver backs up a step, hands up. I am not getting in the middle of this. If there is a legal dispute, call my dispatcher and sort it out with them. He gets back in his truck and drives off. Sharon watches him go, her face turning a deeper shade of red. She looks at me. "You just cost the HOA $200 in tow fees." I shrug. "Send me an invoice with the original violation notice attached, and I will pay it. Until then, I am not paying anything." She storms back to her file cart, slams it into her trunk, and peels out of the neighborhood. The couple across the street gives me a thumbs up before heading back inside. I stand there in my driveway, pulse still racing, wondering what the hell just happened. That night, I go through the HOA portal, line by line. My waiver request from March is still there, marked approved, valid through December. No expiration language anywhere. I screenshot everything and download the approval PDF. Then I search for any record of prior violations on my account. Nothing. I open the neighborhood group chat and scroll back through the last year. I find the thread I remembered, from October. A guy named Mike posted about getting towed for the same commercial vehicle rule. He said he had a valid waiver, but Sharon insisted it was expired. He fought it for 3 weeks and finally got his truck back, but he had to pay the towing company up front and wait for reimbursement. The HOA never admitted fault. I keep scrolling. There are 2 more posts from different people, both in the last year, both involving Sharon and surprise fines or enforcement actions that did not match the written rules. One person said their violation notice was backdated. Another said the fine amount kept changing every time they called. I sit back and stare at my screen. This is not random. This is a pattern. I think about that file cart. Sharon dragged it out like it was full of evidence, but she did not pull a single page. If she really had a thick history on my address, she would have thrown it in my face. Instead, she bailed the second I started recording. The next morning, I drive to the Harbor Point Community Center and ask the front desk for access to HOA records. The clerk, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, tells me I need to submit a formal written request. I ask how long that takes. She says 10 business days, maybe longer if the request is complex. I ask if there is a way to see anything today, just to confirm basic facts. She shakes her head. Everything is managed by the board. I do not have access. I thank her and leave. As I walk back to my truck, I see a woman getting out of a sedan near the mailbox cluster. She is wearing a lanyard with an HOA committee badge. I recognize her from a meeting last year. Her name is Diane, and she sits on the landscaping committee. I walk over and introduce myself. She remembers me. We chat for a minute about the neighborhood, and then I mention Sharon and the towing incident. Diane's face changes. She glances around, then lowers her voice. Sharon has been pulling this for a while. A lot of people are afraid to fight back because she threatens to stack more violations. But between you and me, the board has been getting complaints about her for months. I ask if anyone has ever looked into her records. Diane shakes her head. The board president is her friend. He covers for her. But I know someone who used to sit on the finance committee, and they quit last year because something did not add up in the enforcement ledger. Missing line items, reinspection fees that did not match the invoices. She tells me the person's name is Greg, and he lives 2 streets over. She does not have his number, but she can point me to his house. I thank her, and make a mental note. This is the second clue. Mike's backdated notice, Diane's finance ledger tip, and my own missing violation history. 3 threads pointing to Sharon. That afternoon, I knock on Greg's door. He opens it, wary at first, but when I explain what happened with the tow threat, he invites me in. Greg is in his 60s, retired accountant. He sits me down at his kitchen table and pulls out a thick binder. He says he kept copies of everything before he quit the committee. He flips to a section marked Enforcement Collections. There are rows of entries, homeowner names redacted, but amounts and dates visible. He points to a cluster of entries from last spring. These are all logged as reinspection fees, $50 each. But when I asked Sharon for the vendor invoices to reconcile them, she said the vendor does not provide itemized receipts. That is not how it works. Every contractor gives an invoice. I ask if he reported it. He nods. I brought it to the board president. He told me I was overstepping my role and that enforcement is Sharon's domain. A month later, I resigned. I take a photo of the page with my phone. Greg does not stop me. He says, "If you are going to dig into this, be careful. Sharon does not like being questioned, and she has pull with the board. But if you find something solid, I will back you up." I thank him and leave. Now I have a ledger discrepancy, a pattern of backdated notices, and a board president who protects Sharon. The cold case is starting to come together. I spent the weekend digging through my own records. I pull up my move-in documents from 8 months ago. There is a welcome packet with the HOA rules, and buried in the fine print is a section about records requests. It says the HOA must respond within 10 business days, and if they fail to respond, the request is considered granted and the resident can inspect records in person. I draft a formal records request and email it to the management company and the board president. I ask for all violation notices issued to my address, all enforcement logs mentioning my address, and all financial records related to towing and reinspection fees collected in the last 2 years. I send it Friday night. By Monday morning, I get a reply from Sharon. The email says my request is overly broad and needs to be resubmitted with specific document names and dates. I forward the email to Greg. He replies within an hour. That is a stall tactic. The bylaws do not require you to name specific documents. They are trying to run out the clock. I reply to Sharon and CC the board president and the management company. I restate that my request complies with the bylaws and I expect a response by the statutory deadline. I attach a copy of the relevant bylaw section. No reply. On Tuesday, I get a certified letter in the mail. It is from the HOA, on official letterhead. It says I am being fined $500 for harassment of HOA personnel and abuse of the records request process. I read it twice. There is no hearing date, no appeal process listed, just a payment deadline 2 weeks out and a threat of a lien if I do not comply. I call the management company again. This time, someone picks up. I explain the situation, and the woman on the phone sounds genuinely confused. She says she does not show any harassment complaint in the system, and she does not know who authorized the fine letter. I ask her to check the log. She puts me on hold for 5 minutes, then comes back. She says the letter was generated by Sharon Collins using board authorization, but there is no board meeting minutes approving it. I ask for a copy of the authorization. She says she will have to check with the board president and get back to me. She does not get back to me. By Wednesday, I am running out of patience. The mail carrier confirms a delivery window, and I camp out by the mailbox cluster with my phone ready. At 2 in the afternoon, Sharon pulls up in her car, gets out with a stack of envelopes, and starts shoving them into mailboxes. I start recording from across the street. She does not see me at first. I watch her pull an envelope out of her stack, glance at it, then shove it into my mailbox. Then she pulls another envelope out, this one identical, and puts it back in her stack. I cross the street. Sharon, can I ask what you are doing? She jumps, nearly dropping the envelopes. She turns, sees me, and her face hardens. Delivering notices. It is part of my role. I gesture to my mailbox. You just put something in there. Can I see the envelope you took out first? She clutches the stack to her chest. I do not know what you are talking about. I am doing my job. You are harassing me again. I hold up my phone. I have it on video. You put an envelope in, then you swapped it for another one. Her mouth opens, then closes. She stuffs the envelopes into her car and gets in. I was fixing a mistake. You are twisting this into something it is not. She drives off before I can say anything else. I go to my mailbox and pull out the envelope. It is a second violation notice, this one claiming I failed to respond to the first notice, so the fine is now escalating to $750. The date on the envelope is 2 days ago, but the postmark is missing. Hand delivered. I open the envelope. Inside is a printed notice with today's date at the top. But when I look closely at the paper, the text alignment is slightly off, like it was printed on a home printer instead of a professional one. I take photos of everything. Then I pull up the video I just recorded and watch it again. The moment where Sharon pulls the envelope out, glances at it, and swaps it is clear as day. She was backdating or replacing the notice in real time. That is evidence. Not just suspicion. Evidence. I call Greg. I tell him what I just caught. He whistles low. That is huge. You need to get that video to someone who can act on it, because if Sharon realizes you have it, she will try to bury you in fines and procedure. I ask him who I should take it to. He suggests the HOA attorney. Every association has one on retainer, and they are required to investigate credible complaints about board members and staff. I look up the attorney's name in the HOA bylaws. It is a firm in downtown Missoula. I call and leave a message, attaching the video and a written summary. By Friday, I still have not heard back from the attorney, but I do get a knock on my door at 8 in the morning. It is Sharon, and she has 3 other people with her. 2 men in reflective vests holding clipboards, and one woman with a camera. Sharon does not wait for me to say anything. We are here to conduct a property compliance inspection. You are required to allow access to all exterior areas under Section 9.2 of the CC and Rs. I ask for identification. The two men show me contractor badges. The woman says she is a third-party inspector hired by the HOA. I ask Sharon if this inspection was scheduled. She smiles. Inspections can be conducted at any time with 24 hours notice. We sent an email yesterday. I check my email on my phone. There is nothing. I show her my inbox. No email. She shrugs. Not my problem if your spam filter is broken. We are proceeding. The two men start walking around my front yard, taking photos of my fence, my mailbox, my driveway. The woman with the camera follows, snapping pictures of everything. I follow them. What are you looking for? Sharon does not answer. She is writing on her clipboard, her little handheld stamp ready. One of the men points to my trash cans on the side of the house. These are visible from the street. That is a violation. I look at the cans. They are in the same spot they have been for 8 months, tucked behind a fence gate. You can only see them if you are standing on my property. The man does not argue. He just writes it down. The woman takes a photo of my truck. Commercial vehicle in a residential zone. Repeat offense. I hold up my phone with the waiver approval still on the screen. I have a waiver. It is valid through December. Sharon steps in. That waiver was revoked due to non-compliance with updated guidelines. I ask what updated guidelines. She does not answer. The inspection takes 20 minutes. By the end, they have logged 6 violations. Sharon hands me a printed summary, fresh off her portable printer. Total fines, $1,200. Payment due in 10 days, or a lien will be filed. I look at the list. Half of the violations are invented. The other half are judgment calls that could go either way depending on who is reading the rules. This is a shakedown. Sharon and her crew leave. I watch them pile into 2 vehicles and drive off. The couple across the street is on their porch again, watching. The man shakes his head. I go inside and email Greg, Diane, and the HOA attorney with the inspection summary and a copy of the video from the mailbox incident. I write a short message. This is coordinated harassment in retaliation for my records request. I need help. An hour later, Diane calls me. She says she talked to 2 other committee members, and they agree this has gone too far. They are planning to bring a motion at the next board meeting to audit Sharon's enforcement records and review her authority. But the meeting is not for 2 weeks, and in the meantime, Sharon can keep piling on fines. I thank her and hang up. 2 weeks is too long. I need to act faster. I go back through the video from the mailbox. I clip the relevant section and save it in 3 places: my phone, my laptop, and a cloud backup. Then I draft a formal complaint to the board president, CCing the management company and the HOA attorney. I attach the video, the inspection summary, the backdated notice, and Greg's ledger notes. I write that I have evidence of fraud, retaliation, and financial misconduct, and I am requesting an immediate suspension of Sharon's enforcement authority pending investigation. I send it. Within 2 hours, my phone rings. It is the board president. His voice is clipped, annoyed. You are making serious accusations without proof. Sharon has been with this HOA for 5 years. She has a spotless record. I tell him I have video evidence of her swapping envelopes at the mailbox and written evidence of missing invoices in the enforcement ledger. I offer to meet with him and walk through everything. He says he does not have time for meetings. If I want to dispute a fine, I can file an appeal and wait for the hearing process. I ask when the next hearing is. He says 6 weeks. I tell him that is not acceptable. I have a legal records request that has been ignored, a harassment fine that was never authorized by a board vote, and a pattern of retaliation that is documented on video. If the board does not act, I will file a complaint with the State Attorney General and seek an injunction. There is a long pause. Then he says, "You are going to regret threatening this board." He hangs up. I sit there, staring at my phone. That was not a denial. That was a threat. I call Greg. I tell him what the board president just said. Greg curses under his breath. He is circling the wagons. If he is protecting Sharon this hard, it is because he knows something will come out if anyone looks too close. I ask Greg if he kept any other records from his time on the finance committee. He says he has copies of 3 years of budgets and expense reports. He offers to bring them over. An hour later, Greg is at my kitchen table with 2 more binders. He walks me through the numbers. The HOA collects about $40,000 a year in dues. The operating budget is published every year and accounts for landscaping, management fees, insurance, and maintenance. But buried in the enforcement line item, there is a recurring expense labeled vendor coordination that has grown every year. Last year it was $8,000. This year it is projected at $12,000. I ask what vendor coordination means. Greg shrugs. I asked Sharon the same question. She said it covers administrative costs for managing contractors, tow companies, and inspectors. But there are no invoices, no contracts, no backup, just a lump sum that gets paid every quarter. I do the math. $12,000 a year, paid in quarterly chunks of $3,000, with no documentation. That is fraud. Greg nods. And if Sharon is generating fake violations to justify enforcement actions, she could be skimming from the towing fees and reinspection charges. Every time someone pays a fine, a portion goes to the vendor, but the HOA does not track it. She could be inflating the vendor cut and pocketing the difference. I sit back. This is bigger than a few backdated notices. This is systematic theft. If you are enjoying this deep dive into HOA corruption, hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories of neighborhood justice. I ask Greg if he is willing to testify about the ledger discrepancies. He says yes, but only if I can get a formal investigation started. Otherwise, the board will just dismiss him as a disgruntled ex-committee member. I pull up the video again and watch the mailbox swap one more time. Then I open my email and forward everything to the State Attorney General's office, the local district attorney, and a consumer protection attorney I found online. I write a short summary and request an investigation into HOA fraud and retaliation. I hit send and lean back. Now it is out of my hands. Either someone with authority will act, or I will have to fight this alone for months. That night, I get an email from the HOA attorney. It is short and formal. We have received your complaint. We are conducting a preliminary review and will respond within 5 business days. In the meantime, all enforcement actions against your property are suspended pending review. That is the first good news I have gotten all week. The next morning, Sharon shows up at my door again. This time, she is alone, and she does not have the file cart. She is holding a single piece of paper. She does not knock. She tapes the paper to my door and walks back to her car. I open the door and grab the paper before she can drive off. It is a notice of a special board meeting scheduled for tomorrow night. The agenda has one item: discussion and vote on homeowner complaint alleging enforcement misconduct. I call Diane. She says she just got the same notice. The board president is trying to rush this through before the attorney finishes the review. If they vote to dismiss the complaint tomorrow, it will be harder to reopen it later. I ask if I am allowed to attend. Diane says yes, but I will not be allowed to speak unless the board invites me. I tell her I will be there. I am not letting them bury this in a closed-door vote. The next night, I walk into the community center conference room. There are about 15 people there, including Sharon, the board president, and 3 other board members. Diane is sitting in the back with 2 other committee members. Greg is there too, binder in hand. The board president calls the meeting to order. He reads the agenda item in a flat board voice. We have received a complaint from a homeowner alleging misconduct by our fines and enforcement coordinator. The board has reviewed the complaint and finds no merit. We recommend dismissing it and closing the matter. Diane stands up. I object. The complaint includes video evidence and financial records. We have not reviewed those materials. I move to table this vote until the HOA attorney completes their investigation. The board president does not look at her. The attorney's review is advisory only. The board has the authority to dismiss complaints at our discretion. One of the other board members, a woman in her 40s, raises her hand. I would like to see the video evidence before we vote. The board president waves her off. We do not need to watch videos. The homeowner has a history of non-compliance, and this complaint is clearly retaliatory. I stand up. I do not have a history of non-compliance. I have a history of asking for proof, and that is why Sharon is targeting me. Sharon turns in her chair, glaring at me. You are out of order. Sit down. The board president points at me. If you interrupt again, you will be removed. Diane stands again. Under the bylaws, any homeowner has the right to present evidence during a board meeting if it relates to an agenda item. I move to allow the homeowner to present his evidence. The board president looks annoyed, but one of the other board members nods. Let him show the video. If there is nothing there, we can dismiss it and move on. The board president sighs. Fine. You have 5 minutes. I walk to the front of the room and connect my phone to the projector. I pull up the video of Sharon at the mailbox. The room goes quiet as everyone watches her pull the envelope out, glance at it, and swap it for another one. When the video ends, I look at the board president. That is Sharon backdating a violation notice in real time. She was caught on camera altering enforcement records. If you dismiss this complaint, you are complicit in fraud. Sharon stands up, face bright red. That video is taken out of context. I was correcting a clerical error. This homeowner is twisting everything to make me look bad because he does not want to pay his fines. I turn to her, then explain why the envelope you pulled out had a different date than the one you put in. She does not answer. She looks at the board president. He clears his throat. This is a personnel matter. We will review it in executive session and respond in writing. Diane stands again. No. The bylaws require enforcement actions to be transparent. If there is evidence of fraud, we need to vote on it tonight. The board president snaps at her. You are out of order. Diane does not sit down. I am a committee chair, and I have the right to question board decisions. I move to suspend Sharon Collins from enforcement duties pending a full investigation, and I move to require that all violations include photo proof and a cure checklist going forward. The room erupts. Two other neighbors stand up and voice support. Greg holds up his binder and says he has financial records that back up the fraud allegation. The board president tries to regain control, but it is too late. The woman on the board, who asked to see the video, raises her hand. I second Diane's motion. Let's vote. The board president looks trapped. He calls for a vote. Diane's motion passes 3-2. Sharon is suspended, and the new evidence rule is adopted. Sharon does not wait for the meeting to end. She grabs her bag and storms out, slamming the door behind her. I wait for the right audience, because the reveal needed witnesses. And I just got it. After the meeting, Diane and Greg walk out with me. Diane says the board president will try to sabotage the investigation, but with the vote on record, he has less room to maneuver. Greg says he will submit his ledger notes to the HOA attorney tomorrow. I thank them both and head home. For the first time in 2 weeks, I feel like I am not fighting alone. The next day, the HOA attorney calls me. She says she reviewed the video, the financial records, and the complaint log. She has identified at least 12 violations issued in the last year that lack proper documentation. She is recommending a full forensic audit of Sharon's enforcement records and the vendor coordination expense line. I ask what happens to Sharon. The attorney says that is up to the board, but based on the evidence, she could face civil liability and potentially criminal charges if the audit confirms embezzlement. 2 days later, I get an email from the management company. Sharon Collins has been removed from her role as fines and enforcement coordinator, effective immediately. All pending violations issued by her are under review. Homeowners affected by invalid fines will be notified and refunded within 30 days. That is the consequence I was hoping for. But it is not the end. The audit is still pending, and the board president is still in place. A week later, the HOA schedules another special meeting. This time, the agenda is the forensic audit results. I show up early. The room is packed. At least 30 homeowners are there, many of them people who were targeted by Sharon over the last 2 years. The board president reads the audit summary in a tight, reluctant voice. The audit identified approximately $18,000 in unaccounted vendor coordination expenses over 3 years. The expenses do not match any contractor invoices or receipts. The auditor has referred the findings to local law enforcement for further investigation. The room explodes. People are shouting questions, demanding answers. One man stands up and says Sharon fined him 6 times last year for violations he never committed, and he wants a full refund. The board president tries to calm everyone down, but it is chaos. Finally, Diane stands and raises her voice. We need accountability. I move that the board vote to require actual evidence before fines, including photo proof, timestamps, and a clear cure checklist. And I move that Sharon Collins be placed on a no-contact directive, barred from contacting homeowners outside official HOA business. The motion passes unanimously. The board president does not even try to fight it. As the meeting wraps up, I see Sharon in the back of the room. She is not sitting at the board table. She is standing near the exit, arms crossed, glaring at everyone. When the meeting adjourns, she leaves without saying a word. I do not see her again after that. 2 weeks later, the district attorney's office opens a formal investigation into HOA fraud. Sharon is named as the primary subject. The investigation is still ongoing, but I have heard from Diane that Sharon resigned from the board entirely and moved out of the neighborhood. The board president also resigned a month later, citing personal reasons. The new board president is Diane, and she has been cleaning house ever since. The HOA hired a new management company, implemented the evidence rule for all enforcement, and refunded over $25,000 in invalid fines to homeowners. As for me, I got a formal apology letter from the board and a full refund of the fines Sharon tried to hit me with. My truck is still parked in my driveway, and no one has bothered me since. The cold case turned out to be bigger than I expected. Sharon was not just a petty enforcer. She was running a scheme, generating fake violations to justify vendor fees, and skimming from the enforcement budget. The missing money went back 3 years, and the audit is still uncovering more. I submitted the packet to the HOA attorney and watched the tone change instantly. Once the evidence was in official hands, Sharon had no more room to maneuver. The board had to act, and the consequences were exactly what she deserved. Diane told me that Sharon tried to file a defamation suit against me last month, but her attorney dropped her as a client when they saw the evidence. The case never went anywhere. Greg kept his promise and testified in writing to the district attorney. His ledger notes became the foundation of the criminal investigation. He told me last week that the DA is considering charges for embezzlement and fraud. The HOA voted to require actual evidence before fines, and the new board takes it seriously. Every violation now requires a photo, a timestamp, and a written cure checklist. If you fix the issue within the cure period, the fine is waived. It is a huge improvement, and homeowners are actually starting to trust the HOA again. Sharon gets placed on a no-contact directive by management, which means she cannot email, call, or visit any homeowner without going through the board. She violated it once, showing up at someone's door to argue about a past fine, and the board issued a formal trespass warning. If she does it again, she could face criminal charges. The funny karma beat came during the audit presentation. The board president asked Sharon to explain the vendor coordination expenses, and she confidently read from a policy section out loud, quoting the wrong rule entirely. She was trying to cite a section about landscaping maintenance as justification for enforcement fees. Diane corrected her in front of everyone, and the room erupted in laughter. Sharon turned bright red and walked out. The payback was everything I wanted. A requirement that all violations include photo proof and a cure checklist, Sharon stripped of her enforcement role, and a public vote that exposed her fraud in front of the entire neighborhood. She cannot hurt anyone else now, and the new board is making sure it stays that way. I still live in Harbor Point. The neighborhood is quieter now, less tense. People wave when I drive by. The couple across the street, the ones who watched the whole tow truck confrontation, invited me over for dinner last month. They told me they had been dealing with Sharon's fake violations for years, but they were too scared to fight back. Seeing me stand up gave them hope, and they ended up filing their own complaint after the audit results came out. They got refunded $1,200. The investigation is still ongoing. The DA told Diane that it could take another 6 months before any charges are filed, but the evidence is strong. If Sharon is convicted, she could face jail time and restitution. I do not know if that will happen, but at least she is not in a position of power anymore. I learned a lot from this. I learned that HOA boards can be taken over by 1 or 2 bad actors who abuse their power for personal gain. I learned that most homeowners are too busy or too scared to fight back, and that silence enables abuse. And I learned that if you document everything, stay calm, and find the right allies, you can win even when the system is rigged against you. The cold case broke open because I refused to back down. Sharon thought she could bury me in fake violations and intimidation, but every move she made gave me more evidence. The video at the mailbox, the backdated notices, the missing invoices, the inspection ambush, all of it built the case that finally brought her down. The HOA is not perfect now, There are still petty disputes and people who complain about everything. But the culture has shifted. The board is transparent now. Meetings are recorded. Records are accessible. Enforcement is fair. And homeowners are not afraid to ask questions. I kept the video of Sharon swapping the envelopes. I have it backed up in 3 places, and I will keep it forever. It is proof that the system can be beaten if you fight smart and refuse to give up. The new board president, Diane, has been a breath of fresh air. She actually listens to homeowners, responds to emails within 24 hours, and does not treat enforcement like a weapon. She told me last week that she wants to rewrite the entire rulebook to make it clearer and less punitive. I believe her. Greg is back on the finance committee now, at Diane's request. He is overseeing the cleanup of the enforcement ledger and making sure every dollar is accounted for. He told me he found another $5,000 in questionable expenses that are now under review. I do not know what happened to the board president who protected Sharon. He resigned quietly and moved out of the neighborhood a few weeks later. Rumor is that he was getting kickbacks from the vendor coordination scheme, but there is no proof yet. The DA is still investigating. As for me, I am just trying to live my life. I park my truck in my driveway every night, and no one says a word. I check the HOA portal once a week, and my account shows 0 violations. I have not received a single fine or notice since Sharon was removed. The whole experience changed me. I used to avoid conflict, especially after losing my brother. I moved to Missoula to start over and find peace. But when Sharon came after me, I realized that peace is not the same as silence. Sometimes you have to fight back, not because you want to, but because no one else will. I am not a hero. I am just a guy who got fed up with being bullied by a corrupt HOA enforcer. I got lucky that I had allies like Diane and Greg, and I got lucky that I caught Sharon on video. But luck only gets you so far. The rest was research, documentation, and refusing to back down when everyone told me to just pay the fine and move on. If you are dealing with an abusive HOA, do not give up. Document everything. Keep every email, every notice, every receipt. Record conversations when you legally can. Find allies in the neighborhood and on the board. File formal complaints. Request records. Do not let them intimidate you into silence. And if you find a cold case, dig into it. The patterns are usually there if you look hard enough. Missing money, backdated notices, fake violations, shady vendors. It all leaves a trail. Follow the trail, connect the dots, and expose it. Sharon thought she could get away with it because she had been doing it for years. She thought no one would fight back. She was wrong. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.